My name is James Williams. I'm the Director of Programs for the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, and it's a real pleasure to have you with us during this show, because it is a show over 3 days, our digital transformation event. Today, all about personal data, digital identity. Now, before I introduce my guest for this little segment, I came across an article about something I'd never heard of. I never knew existed, and I don't think many of us across the industry knew it existed. Namely, there was a chat service set up for the criminal fraternity. It was called EncroChat, encrypted chat, basically. And there were 60,000 members of criminal gangs around the world involved in this chat. And Europol were able to hack it, thanks to experts. And unbelievably, one criminal here in the UK was arrested because in the chat, he had in the palm of his hand a block of cheese. It was actually Blue Stilton from a shop here in the UK called Marks and Spencer's. They do some really nice food. And they caught his fingerprint actually in that shot and were able to arrest him on the back of that and link him to some serious crimes. Absolutely unbelievable. But anyway, I digress. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Andy Milton to you. Andy, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, James. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. Great to have you with me. Andy is Head of Sales and Marketing with Hitachi Security Business Group, and he manages the EMEA region. So lovely to have you with us. Now, Hitachi is a company that I've heard of a lot over the years. When I was a kid, that was a good few years ago. I'm talking about 40 years ago now. All I knew of Hitachi was that it was all about stereos and TVs. But the company has been around since 1910. And for those of you out there who don't know Japanese, and again, I had to do my research, I don't. Hitachi means actually sunrise. So, Andy, would like to introduce your company, because it's massive. You could do so many different things, and indeed your particular area and how Hitachi came to be involved in doing what you're doing.
Okay. So, yeah, as you said, James, Hitachi's huge. They do, or we do, everything from power tools, earth moving equipment. Many people in the UK will know us from the trains that have been in the news quite a lot lately, not necessarily for the best reasons, but hopefully all fixed now. As well as organizations like Vantara, which is our data management and cloud-based solutions business. But Hitachi is an organization divided up into many different groups. And our particular group was formed out of one of the medical research areas. About 25 years ago, they performed some research looking at people's vein patterns and using their vein patterns to predict health and wellness and some other things, and learned some interesting facts that a human vein pattern is consistent from the age of about 5 or 6, changes very little in its uniformity. Obviously, it changes in its size and is affected very minor changes depending on people's weight and people's health. It invariably stays pretty consistent. So with that information, they started to look at that as a means of identifying people, and that is how our business unit was formed.
What about with fingerprints? Isn't that the same? Because broadly they won't change, or there's more wear and possible tear, so therefore it's not so accurate. What's
yeah. What we've seen with a lot of customers, fingerprint solutions are very easy and very consistent. As long as the user isn't performing tasks like playing pianos, playing guitars, working in construction, anything that's likely to mean that their fingerprint gets damaged. And that's the benefit of finger vein. It's much harder to damage your finger vein as it's internal. We also, because of the flow of blood through a vein versus the staticness of a fingerprint, it means that we can detect life much more easily as well. The other thing that we benefit from as well is that finger vein is fingerprint can be left behind. You touch something, your fingerprint gets left on a glass, left on a table. Finger vein, the user has to be more complicit in providing it. So the user invariably needs to present their hand or do something that lets the person that wants to capture it to capture it.
That absolutely makes sense. Because now I remember pictures when the US president comes to the UK or any dignitary comes to the UK, they always go for a traditional drink of a pint in a pub for good photo opportunity, but then immediately after their security smashes the glass for that exact reason. Yeah. So you see that. What about the cost of it? Because I was talking to my other half and she manages administration at a college up here in Yorkshire. And I was thinking that technology now exists with the vein patterns for security to get through doors. Isn't it horrifically expensive at the moment, or what's the situation for businesses out there?
Yeah, so I think over the last couple of years, the price of the devices has come down hugely. We're now, our devices would be comparable to that of a standard fingerprint reader of a good quality. And also we have more flexibility. So using standard technology such as laptop cameras and mobile phone cameras, we can also now read the vein pattern as well. So rather than it having to be a specialist device with infrared, we can now use standard cameras. If anybody wants to have a look at that, it's Hitachi's High 5 product, or Vein ID 5 as it's branded in the UK.
Fantastic. It does what the name says on the tin. It's very, very clear. Now, what other modes of biometrics are there out there, and what kind of use cases are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing. A lot of organizations or a lot of the companies selling this technology typically have one solution. So we've got finger vein, somebody else might have facial recognition, somebody else might have fingerprint, but or voice, and all of these things have certain use cases that they're going to be more useful to. But where I think things are going to start to change is we need to blend some of these solutions together to ensure that we recognize the person much more succinctly, and we're able to understand that that's really the right person in front of us. But also based on the situation and the environment the person's in. Using voice recognition on a noisy train is probably not the greatest idea. And equally, do you want to be shouting into your phone while there's other people around? But equally, if the room's dark and dimly lit, then things like raising your hand to a camera isn't going to work so well either. So I think that's where we're going to see more blended approach to biometrics being moved together. And you will see that from Hitachi. We're partnering with a couple of companies at the moment, and the first one we will launch is actually another part of Hitachi's got a facial recognition. So we'll start to launch face and hand joined together, which I think will give us a lot more flexibility for different use cases.
I'm about to say that. So I've got here just a regular Android phone, just happens to be Samsung here. And I use the fingerprint, the touch thing. That's using the fingerprint, though, obviously, at the moment.
Yep. That is using the fingerprint. We can do the same thing using finger vein. And the reasons that a lot of people would, or a lot of organizations were happy with the biometrics provided by the phone companies to start with. It's only as time's moved on, they've realized that the inconsistencies between Samsung, Huawei, Apple, one might have very strong authentication, one might offer a very weak, and also that people store multiple identities on their phones. So not just your identity, but you might have your wife's on there and your children's. And then if they're accessing banking or finance or sensitive data, you really want to make sure it's the right person and not just someone whose identity is bonded to that phone.
Okay, so I've got my identity, the finger vein identity on a device. That device gets stolen.
Yep.
What happens next? What do I do? So I get a replacement device. How do I go about re-enrolling?
Yeah, that's interesting. So there's a couple of things with the re-enrollment. It was always the scary thing for people that if you lost a device, my identity, my biometric identity is gone forever. I'll never be able to claim it back again. That for us is strictly not true. We never actually capture an image of your hand. If you think of it as what happens, we see a small video of the image of the vein pattern. We then create a mathematical representation. So it's almost like someone creating a drawing of that picture, and then we encrypt that. So unless someone could understand our whole process, and it means that we can allow people to enroll multiple times and it still be the same person. We keep that database in a couple of different places depending on the use case, either discreetly on the phone if the user wants to be in complete control of their identity, or we can store it on the phone and in the cloud. So if someone wants to be able to recover their identity quickly, they can just straight away go to a new device and say, I'm Andy, can I have my identity? And it will download the template onto the phone and we can perform the verification there.
What's your perspective out there? Because people are so used to using pins. For example, I've got a new laptop over here, my other laptop over here, and rather than even typing a password in, I just put a 4-digit pin and it opens it up. So people are so conditioned to pins. Even if you had this finger vein option right there easily, will people use it, or do you think it'll take a bit of time for people to move and adopt?
I think it's the same as many things we've seen. You know, if you ask people 20 years ago, would they use their finger or their face on their Apple device, they'd have probably said no. They were quite happy with their 4-digit pin. But actually, once people understand that it's more convenient, it's easier, and it provides a high level of security, I think user experience is always the key for these. And we've seen it. We're doing a project with a UK government-based organisation, and for somebody to type in a username and PIN takes them approximately 14 seconds. Using finger vein, it can take them less than 1. So if that person's typing their username and password in 5 or 6 times a day, that saves them quite a chunk of time. If it's 50 or 60 times a day, it becomes even greater. And if you're performing tasks that are important or have financial implications or privacy implications, then making sure it's actually that person and not just the person who knows the username and password is important.
Fantastic. And in terms of just from my knowledge and indeed the viewers' knowledge, the size of the technology, can it be miniaturized, as in not totally ultra tiny, but it can be considerably smaller than it is today, potentially for various use cases, very intrusive use cases?
Yeah, we're launching a range of different options and devices over the next few months, and you know, they all work in different ways. Whether it's sitting in a retail environment for someone to come up to and verify a purchase, or if it's somebody to access a door, but equally people accessing mobiles or laptops or computer systems based in secure locations.
Fantastic. Well, for me, the key thing is this is real. It's here. And it's now, because I remember over the years watching various films like with Aliens, where a captain of one of the ships used his breath for authentication and all these different ways. But vein pattern, folks, it's real and here and now. So, Andy, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
It's been great having you and knowing and hearing more about Hitachi, because as I mentioned, it's a company many of us have heard about for so long, but not really known about all the in-depth areas you're involved with. So great talking to you, and please stay on and enjoy the rest of the next 3 days. And I know we'll be seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James.
All the very best. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.